Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Westman, and this is the Keto Made Simple podcast.
Hi, everyone. Dr. Eric Westman here, and welcome to my channel where I typically review and debunk nutritional misinformation online, but occasionally I get to interview the movers and shakers in the nutrition, keto, low-carb world, and today I have Sam Feltham. Sam, thanks for being with me.
Absolute pleasure, Eric.
So please tell them, as if the audience didn't know who you were, who are you, and how did we come to be speaking, yes, in London a few weeks back and now today?
Absolutely. My name's Sam Feltham. I'm the director of the Public Health Collaboration, which is a charity in the UK dedicated to helping cultivate a society where everyone enjoys good metabolic health. And we do that in a myriad of ways through several different projects. But our three major ambitions are to help reverse the type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes epidemics, get food addiction recognised as an official diagnosis, and also undo the childhood obesity crisis. All at the same time, hopefully, because they're kind of all intertwined a little bit. We've got projects all lined up with those. The prominent ones being the Lifestyle Club, which is our type 2 diabetes remission coaching service, and then Liberate, food addiction coaching service, and then our Real Food Rebellion, which is our schools-based project that helps children and young people better understand the environment that they're growing up in and how to make healthier choices, basically. Now, I kind of got into this space 15 years ago. It was 2010, and I just had a small career as a snowboard instructor, instructing around the world. I started in New Zealand, and then I went over to Vermont, and then back to New Zealand, and then did Colorado, and then New Zealand again, and then the Alps, and then Banff was my final season. And during that season, I decided I was kind of a bit sick and tired of moving every 6 months and having to make, a new group of friends. It's great in your mid-20s. It's very exciting. But reality hits eventually, or at least it did for me. So I was wondering, what should I do for the rest of my life? And there was a program in Canada called The Last £10, the host of which was a former CFL player, the Canadian Football League. And he was really inspiring, actually. So he essentially turned himself into a personal trainer after his football career. And I thought that was really inspiring. So I decided to apply to become a master personal trainer with the European Institute of Fitness. I got in and managed to qualify in summer 2010. Then I moved I moved to London with my brother and set up a personal training business in London. And over the next 5 years, I managed to build that fitness business, and I started to focus on fitness boot camps to 10 locations around the country. It was really, really exciting. And one of the things that we'll come on to later that kind of gave me a bit of notoriety in this space were my overfeeding experiments on myself. And that kind of got me in touch with a lot of people like yourself, Eric, and many other, nutritional legends throughout the world. And I always had in the back of my head, how can I, affect more change in the world? And it was the end of 2015, and I found myself in a bit of a philosophical quandary where, I could focus on my private business and try and affect change that way. Because, we're helping hundreds of people every month, if not thousands, every month, improve their lifestyles. But I always felt like it was an uphill battle with it all, and that you kind of needed really kind of systemic change. So I thought the other option would be to create a non-profit organization that would focus on improving dietary guidelines and ultimately, you know, population outcomes as well, you know. So I pitched this idea of creating a charity called the Public Health Collaboration to the likes of David and Jen Unwin, Joanne McCormick, Trudy Deacon, Ian Lake, and several others. And they say, great idea, but where's the money going to come from? Which is essentially always the bottom line. And I said, right, what we'll do, we'll have an online crowdfunding campaign and see if there's an appetite for this. And we launched that crowdfunding campaign February 2016. And within that month, we managed to double our target, which really just gave us the seed money to start the PHC going. Over the past almost 10 years, it's our 10-year anniversary next year, we've grown to a fairly sizable organization, you know, with a couple of hundred volunteers across the country, and a fair few employees, but also a scientific advisory committee that's fairly big, and also board of trustees, and just lots and lots of support, and you know, there's, to my amazement, we have actually created some change. So when we first came out in the world, Public Health England issued a press release saying that we were irresponsible for saying what we were saying, which was, you know, just to eat real food, avoid fake food, be active every day.
God forbid.
Yeah, I know. What? Are you crazy? But just last year, or earlier this year rather, we actually co-authored a open letter to NICE, who are the organisation who is responsible for medical guidelines in the UK, with the British Dietetics Association, which is kind of like the, you know, the equivalent of the is it? No, it's not the ADA. What's the dietitians organization in the States?
They changed their name to the AND, Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics.
There you go. There you go. So it'd be the equivalent of, you know, I don't know, low-carb USA. The Nutrition Initiative, co-authoring a letter with them, saying that, you know, we need to update the dietary guidelines within NICE for type 2 diabetes remission, and you know, low carb is one of those should be one of those options presented to patients. So there's definitely been some mainstream changes, which is absolutely fantastic. But kind of, you know, we've been in touch for a fair while now, haven't we, Eric? Over a decade. That process.
Years ago, it was actually Andreas Ianfelt, I think, who started a diet doctor out of Sweden, who started showing this graphic of the score of low carb versus low fat. And there was this little name underneath. It was Public Health Collaboration of the UK. And so this website popped up that had this great graphic of, you know, if you had a score like a, you know, football or soccer, no, soccer would be pretty low, but football game, it was like 20-0, or the studies showed low carb beat low fat. And so I've always enjoyed the practical figures and infographics that have come out of the Public Health Collaboration UK. That kind of got into my slide deck then. You know, of course, I've been careful to say low carb wins, but low fat can work too, right? There are always other ways to go about it. But then there was a curious web presence of this young man, Sam Feltham, who did a self-experiment with different diets, and it caught my eye, I have to say. And then you were still in the game enough to write a paper, and so it's published in the medical literature. Why did you do this N of 1 experiment that basically blows out of the water calories in, calories out, and even in just one person, you know. What was on your mind for that study? And we'll get into the study.
For sure. Thank you so much, Eric. And, you know, I must express my gratitude to you for enabling the.
Well, you did
that.
I helped you write it.
You put it together. You made it get into the peer-reviewed literature. So that's mind-blowing. So yeah, thank you for that. But you know, the original thought process for that. So it was 2013, and I was dealing with clients, you know, on a daily basis. And, you know, I always, before becoming a personal trainer, I generally, you know, believe the calorie formula. But then when I became a personal trainer and started actually, you know, advising people, it didn't seem to work. And it wasn't until I read Why We Get Fat by Gary Taubes that I started to actually advise my clients low carb diets. And from that point on, it just became easier. Like, you know, you just said, you know, eat until you're not hungry anymore. And then, you know, go from there. Just, you know, avoid the starchy refined carbohydrates. Essentially,
you don't have to count calories
at all. You don't have to count calories. Yeah, precisely. You don't have to count calories at all. And you know, some people really did flourish with that, but some people really still struggle with the idea that it wasn't all about calories. And so I thought, how can I demonstrate this to my clients? And, you know, I've always been a naturally lean individual. So this got me thinking, you know, if somebody can, you know, superficially eat, you know, around calorie maintenance and, you know, over the years continually put on weight, you know, eating low fat fake food, for instance, then surely the opposite is true in that, you know, me being a naturally lean individual, I can eat quite, you know, superficially a calorie surplus, but not put on weight. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to overeat, and not just overeat a little bit, but twice as much. So I ate twice as much as I usually would. But I wanted to obviously demonstrate the different types of diets that were out there. So I started off with my usual low carb real food diet. And instead of, you know, my 3,000 calories, I was eating almost 6,000 calories a day. And when you calculate it over those 3 weeks, the net calorie surplus, and this is after, you know, the protein thermogenic effect, any exercise that I was doing, and also loss from fiber as well. I was in a 47,000 calorie surplus, right? And so according to the calorie formula, I should have put on 6.1 kilograms, but in actual fact, I only put on 1.3 kilograms, which is about, you know, just under 3 pounds. So that was kind of mind blowing. But at the same time, I actually lost about 1 inch from my waist. So, you know, it was a bit mind blowing. And that was just the first one. And that really kind of sparked things off on social media. And, you know, this was only 2013. So, you know, you still didn't maybe have the connectivity that you had now, but it was getting talked about everywhere, you know, which was awesome to see. So I waited 3 months to kind of, you know, quote unquote biochemically reset, and then the second one, I decided to do the opposite. So low fat fake food, eating cereals and skim milk for breakfast, then having, you know, skinless chicken sandwiches for lunch with low fat mayonnaise and things like this, and then also like a low fat lasagna for dinner, and, you know, finish it off with some chocolate or something like that.
But again, 6,000 or 5,800 calories a day.
Exactly. And exactly. And I managed to get the net calorie surplus within 53 calories of each other. So it was as close as you could really get, given all the variables that were in there. So again, a 47,000 calorie surplus, so exactly the same as the first one. Should have put on 6.1 kilograms, and I actually put on 7.1 kilograms, which is about 16 pounds. And for a guy that is, naturally slim, all of his life, that was quite, damning for me. Just feeling quite a bit of flab for the first time.
I remember you wrote some comments about what it was like to be on the different diets.
Yeah.
It was hard to consume all the low carb food, right? Because you were full, but you felt so terrible on the higher carb one, it's kind of the bloating, that sort of thing. So, and that matters, but still the point so far then, so you develop two totally different dietary patterns, the same calorie level, and gain different amounts of weight over the 3-week period of time.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and that way,
and exercise was the same as well, just so that people know.
Well, what I also liked about what you had done is that you took pictures. So there's actually a company that validates your weight by having you take a selfie with your phone and raw side view, and dates down. So I like that as part of the methodology.
Yeah.
In fact, if someone's watching, wanting to recreate this or recapitulate, it's great to have the number, but then also the picture, because you can just see your belly was bigger on this.
Oh, definitely. And also in my chin as well. Like you can really see, like in my chin, like
But so you were exercising, right? Biking.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Yep.
what the other interesting thing is that, and I have to just say, it struck me coming back from the meetings in June that I went to in Europe, is that now there's a new cohort of people like you who are, I hate to tell you, but you're younger, but you're not coming to this because you've been sick and you're trying to fix something. You're asking the question, what's the healthiest way to be? And so now you have the overfeeding of low carb, 5,800, you gained a kilo, you for the 3 weeks. Now you have the 5,800 high carb, low fat, and you gained 7 kilos.
Yes, exactly.
You did. What was your thought process for the third group or third dietary pattern?
Yeah. So I obviously wanted to land somewhere in between, and that was real food, very low fat, high carb, vegan, right? So vegan, what? Just to prove a point, I'd really just throw that into the mix as well, because I thought that was it was just an interesting aspect.
No, I love it. And the other thing about being able to choose these groups, and albeit it's just one human, but the point is choosing a group, you can't, there's social factors, ethical factors, and then just popularity of things. If we do a generic study of just carb level, for example, doesn't take into account the fiber, feeling about fiber and vegan. And so I love that. The third group was same high calorie vegan.
Yeah.
What happened?
Yes. So I managed to get the same kind of gross calorie surplus, but the net calorie surplus ended up being 40,000 calories. And the reason for the discrepancy was because the amount of fiber that I was eating. So
what was the total surplus in the other groups?
47. Sorry, they were 47, and this was 40. So I should have. It's not too bad. It's pretty close, but not as close as I wanted to.
Couldn't eat. It was just so filling.
Oh no! It was, again, like I was able to eat the same gross volume of calories, but the reason that I wasn't able to get to the net calorie surplus was because of the amount of fiber. So I was eating.
Just didn't have the calories.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, as you well know, the recommended daily intake, or at least in the UK, is 30 grams of fiber. I was eating 175, which was a lot. And, I'm not sure my wife has still forgiven me during that time. Because to say I was regular is another thing.
Oh, you mean fiber makes you poop?
It sure does.
Yeah, the bacteria are chomping on all those.
Oh, yeah. When you're eating that much, it's quite steady. But anyway, that aside, that 40,000 should have converted into 5.2 kilogram weight gain. But I actually only put on 4.7. So you get pretty close. But still a little less than the calorie formula said I should. However, even then, it was 7,000 calories less than the first one, yet I put on 3 times the amount of weight. So, the whole discrepancy and kind of miscommunication misconnect between the calorie formula and the actual outcomes with 3 different diets was quite demonstrable, I thought, and really helped out a lot of my clients understand, wow, this really might not be just about calories.
Yeah. Well, so while it seems predictable for the people who understand calories and glucose and insulin and or carbs, the carb insulin hypothesis, or you might say it's the hormonal hypothesis of weight gain. It makes sense that this would happen, but that I wouldn't have predicted that much of a difference necessarily. I wonder, well, lots of things. So since that time, has anyone approached you? Has it been replicated? That's really what's needed here.
Yeah. So this is it. So nobody's really tried to replicate it. And, I was particularly hoping that, a real calorie advocate would try to replicate it. And yeah, I called people out at the time. So when I'd during the experiments and, right afterwards, I was, saying to, people like Lane Norton and things like that, well, if you think I'm lying, do it yourself,
Right.
Demonstrate it and see what happens.
Yeah. So this paper was published in 2021, October 2021, in the Current Opinion in Endocrinology and Diabetes and Obesity. The title is A Case Study of Overfeeding 3 Different Diets. Of course, first author is you and Sam Feltham. So it's been 4 years now, and I've only heard one blip comment, and that was Ben Bickman. So Ben had Ben being a biology scientist at BYU in the U.S., and he mentioned it at a meeting, and it drew his attention because it wasn't just on the internet. It had been formalized and put into a research paper like this. So it's been fascinating that's often that's what's required. I mean, everyone will ignore it until, oh, there's a paper. And
Exactly.
Even though it was real without the paper, there is a formality, and actually the vetting of getting into a paper like this is, I think, important still. But so some limitations so your weight changed, but you really didn't measure the body composition, did you? Like the water weight, fat weight.
Yeah, I did. I had a bit of that data. So I only.
There's one might argue that the difference is just water, right?
Yeah, for sure. Now I did do bod pods. I did a bod pod.
Oh, okay.
At the end of the first experiment. Now I didn't do it at the start. However, I did do a bod pod at the beginning of the second experiment, which is obviously like my normal body composition. At the start of the low fat fake food trial, and that was the same as at the end of the first one. So logically it didn't change much over the first experiment. Now on the second one, yes, my body fat went from, I think it was 12 up to maybe 25 or something like that on the bod pod. So it was quite clear that it was like there was fat involved, not just not just water.
Well, what I really loved about what you did, and is that it kind of throws out, like you said to Lane Norton, kind of the straw man of prove me wrong, and you did the due diligence to validate, I think sufficiently, and with the weight and the body composition, and then the pictures, and so this is like throwing down the gauntlet, and I think this is a challenge for those who are holding on to the old paradigm that calories in, calories out, blah blah blah. But no, yeah, some other person, in fact, a medical student could do this for their, in fact, a class could make people do it, to show just how different the reality is from what the teaching is. And so this has been almost 5 years now, 4 years. So this is a challenge to anyone who debate or thinks that you faked it or what. Well, Sam, you do it again.
I'm not sure I could handle it now with 2 young kids, and also I'd be 40 plus as well. It's probably a bit of a spanner in the works. But look, any young gun calorie advocate out there that's looking to make a name for themselves, please take up the challenge. Prove us wrong.
Well, there's a young medical, well, now he's a physician, Nick Norwitz, who is self-experimented with the Oreo cookies and all this, and he did something similar. I don't know if you saw it, where he overfed himself calories, but he was also measuring his body temperature, and his body temperature went up. And I think this is one of those explanations of why some people stay lean, some people gain the weight. So you can actually burn off the calories you eat as heat.
Yeah.
And you called it very quickly there, you said the thermogenic effect of food. And but so this really needs to be redone to kind of put the nail in the coffin, or say that maybe this isn't true, that calorie is just all about calories, but there's so much other experiential clinical evidence that that's not the case. Anyway, thank you for recapitulating that, and even now, 4 years later, no one has debunked or thought that what you did was wrong, in terms of trying to replicate it or trying to replicate it and couldn't replicate it. And that's really important, in the hallmark of science is replication. So someone might be out there as you look what I found, and then, well, I want to, and again. So getting back now, unless there's another concept you want to talk about from the end of one.
No, not necessarily. I mean, the one thing I wanted to just mention is that there kind of are studies that have been done that are ish like this, and that's the Claude Bouchard ones. In Canada, you got the twins, and they were in metabolic wards, and he overfed them by like 100 calories, and so I think it was 10 off the top of my head. It was 10 sets of twins, and the weight gain ranged from like 2.5 kilo weight gain to 10, even though it was the same, calorie extra amount of calories, but even within the twins there was weight gain variation, right? So it's like that's proof in itself that it just isn't all about the calories.
Well, but in today's world, we need an in-your-face kind of study.
He said that was
the appeal of Nick Norwitz eating all these Oreos and dropping his LDL. It's all of it. He kind of knew that was going to happen, but but anyway, that great work. Now back to today or last month, the Public Health Collaboration of the UK had a wonderful meeting, and you're the driving force behind those meetings as well. And one of the, three of the, I mean, how many lectures stood out? But they were all stellar. And of course, clinically, David Unwin and Jen Unwin are just, changing the UK environment. And
Yes.
part of it is their connection to the powers that be in the government. And then, of course, I hear stories of they think, oh, they're all optimistic, and then the government decides not to do whatever, So
Yeah.
it's still still kind of a grassroots. No, it's definitely a grassroots change. But so one of the studies, and you may have seen it before, but it was first in-depth presentation I saw of Isabella Cooper's study of 10 women who were otherwise healthy. Again, this is kind of changing from, is a low-carb diet therapeutic? Can it reverse diabetes? Yeah, that's kind of set.
Sure. Yeah.
But then what do you do, like, after you get here? Or the question of, let's say you didn't have a disease at all, and maybe having ketones around and being keto, maybe that's a better metabolism, so that's the theory, right? And to see this now being studied is really pioneering, right? It's taking the idea that this is bizarre, it's Atkins, you don't want to do it, and then get off of it, oh my God, to no, what if this is actually the better diet to do even when you're healthy? And what was your impression of the work that Dr. Cooper's doing? Because I think you've been closer to it than me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Isabella, every time I speak to Isabella, I just feel like my brain is insignificant compared to hers. Like, she's so just incredible, like, in terms of like the depth of knowledge that she's got. It's mind blowing.
With the big picture view,
Yes. Yeah. I mean, the main outcome is that everything gets better, essentially. For those women. And speaking of which, Isabella's going to be going into more detail at next year's conference, which is our 10-year anniversary conference next year, which we're very excited about. And tickets have just gone on sale. So, if people want to check that out and be up to date with Isabella's research, as well as lots of others, go to phcukconference.org. But my main impression with Isabella's research is that, as you say, not only is ketogenic therapeutic, but it can quite possibly be one of the healthiest approaches for longevity, for instance. You'll need long-term data to properly prove that hypothesis, but the immediate biomarkers that she's measuring, it's certainly shows that everything's improving.
Well, we've come a long way from 20 years ago when I did studies with IRBs, the approval boards for research. They were like, well, can you feed people all that fast? And now here people have voluntarily done that. So what was really neat about this study is she recruited people who had already been doing a keto diet. On average, I think it was about 4 years, and the average age was about 35. So these are young, healthy women, and I think there were 10 women. But as you said, that everything looked great, and everything means lots of things were checked.
Exactly. Yeah,
almost everything you could check has been checked, and even some of the women had keto babies, which I first heard about in Indonesia pre-pandemic. Doctors there were saying that these children who don't eat carbs are even developing faster, and I'm like, well, where are the publications? And I went, well, they don't have them, but that word of mouth for me to hear that gave me some how should I say confidence that it's okay for children not to eat so many carbs. And then, of course, children are born in ketosis, and probably when they're breastfeeding from a keto mother, they're probably still in ketosis, which this is all wide open. And I'm so glad that you're focusing now on pediatrics and children. I mean, when I go to an obesity meeting, I look around and I say, where are the pediatricians? They need to be in on this now. Of course, the U.S. now is inundated with all the shots and the medications and that'll probably drive pediatric treatment too. But this food that matters. So what is it? What have you come up with at the PAC UK to address childhood nutrition and obesity?
Yeah, so we've been working on our schools program for the past couple of years, called Real Food Rebellion. And the kind of the idea is for, the kids to really rebel against the, environment that's been put against them.
Interesting.
Because we really do need a bit of a rebellion from the kids, because it is just, from my perspective, and particularly the father of two young kids, kids' brains are getting hijacked by ultra processed food and by screens. And we really need to change that if we want, the next generation to continue to improve humanity and civilization, because otherwise we're just going to get kids that are sicker and fatter every single generation, and then civilization is literally just going to deteriorate because we're unhealthy.
I always hope for a technological fix, but that's nice.
Yeah, part of it. And
well, how do you bring in the Real Food Rebellion? How's the teaching there?
So over the past couple of years, we've been piloting it in different schools. Just this Easter, we had it at several schools for 700 high school aged students, and then 700 elementary school kids as well, because we've got so in the UK, high schools are called secondary schools, and then elementary schools are called primary schools. So we've got the secondary school project and the primary school project, because obviously the two approaches are a little bit different, because, those kids learn in slightly different ways and want different things as well. Primary school kids want, cartoons and things like that. Secondary school kids want it in an app, or something that's just a bit more teenage friendly. Yeah, TikTok-ish. Yeah, exactly. So that sort of approach. So we've been learning over the past couple of years, and incredibly we've been very fortunate in that we've been given this opportunity for some funding from an organization to really take Real Food Rebellion to the next level. So we're actually just in the process of re-updating the materials, which is incredible. Over the next year, we are going to be improving that. But the way that it works at the moment is that it's a 6-week program that the teacher teaches in school. And it's because when you've got schools involved, you've got to think about the funding from their perspective. How's it going to fit into the curriculum that's being taught already? So it's actually doing 30-minute lessons that works in what's in the UK is PHSE lessons, and it's using that PHSE funding to actually make it happen. So we give them all of the resources as part of that to teach it, but also give the materials to the kids to actually learn about better nutrition and better choices for when they're out in the wild at the supermarket or anything like that. So in essence, the teacher teaches it with our materials and our support at the moment, but we're looking to expand those materials, whether it be some sort of funky AI chatbot that the teenagers can speak to, because they're all over speaking to ChatGPT in terms of everything, but obviously we want to try and have an AI bot that would be particularly cultivated to certain responses and things like that. So we're yet to hash all of that out and it's kind of early days in a way, but we've got promising feedback from both the teachers and the students on what we've done already. So fingers crossed, that will continue. And as that develops as well, parent engagement is a big part of that, because, they're the ones that are cooking the meals for the kids, and also, teaching the kids' behaviors. So trying to help the parents make their own changes will be helpful as well.
Is the food environment like the US, where candy's everywhere and
Oh yeah,
and children can have candy all the time? I'm told
very much so.
in some countries the schools limit sugar and candy to, say, 1 day a week. Role modeling that in the school would be so important. Is that part of the program, or is it really just educating the children, not changing the food at the school?
Yeah, for the time being, we're kind of treading lightly a little bit, because it's a very sensitive subject, particularly when you're dealing with a large, broad population of people. So yeah, and food, it's so emotional for people, and so we're at this stage, it's really just about informing both the teachers, the students, and the parents just about the dangers of ultra processed food and sugar and things like that. And then as time goes by, then they'll be more aware of oh my god, we're actually giving kids candy every single week. What are we doing? And we're giving sugary desserts every single day, and that's something that really grinds my gears. Is the school meals, they're delivering sugary desserts every single day. Why? You don't need that. You can just have a bowl of fruit and that's it. It's even less money, because you don't have to prepare it or anything like that. You just put some fruit out for them to pick. If they don't have it, they don't have it. If they want it, then they go for it. You just don't need to give them the sugary dessert. So it contains no nutritional value.
Well, it's interesting that you come at it from a rebellion sort of in the language, because it is like teaching kids to protect themselves, and yet the sugar, you want it, right? And you want more of it, which kind of gets us into the other major theme of the PHC UK, I think, and it's been very helpful worldwide, is the idea of sugar addiction, right? And so we're basically teaching our children, like I was, that it's okay to have this addictive substance, even though the long-term health consequences are not great. So do you incorporate a sugar addiction in this, or let me know what else you're doing THC-wise for sugar addiction, please?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we don't mention it at the primary school project, and he gets a cursory mention at the in the secondary school project. But without the ability to actually open up that conversation, particularly to a teenage audience as well, where you really need kind of a clinical experience. Like, all you could do is signpost, and even then, our Liberate, our food addiction coaching service, doesn't necessarily cater for teenagers either.
Right.
And eating disorders is quite, again, another sensitive subject that needs even one-to-one time with people. And that Real Food Rebellion doesn't quite have that that infrastructure just yet. Maybe one day, but we'll take it step by step. So yeah, on that note, Liberate has been also getting a couple of years, and we piloted it last year, and that paper should hopefully be coming out in the next couple of months rather, in Frontiers, which would be absolutely magic, because the preliminary data suggests that even though we're suggesting to people to reduce their carbohydrates and avoid carbohydrates, and also tying that in with a 12-step program, that we've reduced binge eating symptoms by 44% as a result of that. Because traditionally in the eating disorders world, you know, they say not to demonize any food, right? And that everything is on the table, everything should be on the table, everything should be available. But when it comes to food addiction, it's an addiction. And so, you know, the people that have those addictions can't control themselves, they can't moderate themselves. So again, it's exactly the same as like telling an alcoholic, you know, just moderate your drinking, you know, just have one. It's like, that's just not going to happen. It's insane. So when it comes to food addiction, then yeah, that's what we're saying, that abstinence really is unfortunately your only option. Now, you know, slanting towards a low carb diet could be helpful in that. Not everybody does it in the Liberate program, a low carb diet, but they'll certainly shift towards real food, if not slightly higher protein. And that's helpful in itself to lower food noise, in terms of, you know, that background voice that you've got in the back of your head saying that, yes, I'm going to go eat, you know, some candy or a donut or whatever, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, Liberate runs at the moment 8-week courses, about every 2 or 3 months they start. The most recent round of courses has just started, and the next one will probably be in October or November. But excitingly, we're about to launch a pre-recorded version of the course, which is going to be a lot more cost effective for people as well. And it means you can watch it in your own time, but it also gives you the opportunity to sign up to the weekly support sessions, so you can still get that live session supports from people that people really enjoy about it, you know, because it's great to have things on hand and do it in your own time, but equally you do want to speak with other people that are having similar experiences so that you can learn from each other, and also be understood as well, because it can be a real lonely journey, food addiction. So if people want to find out more about that, they can go to liberatetoday.org, and yeah, just get in touch if you've got any questions.
Great. We know that brings to mind the binge eating treatment, and that's totally different than the traditional view and traditional treatment. I remember early on, 20 years ago here at Duke University, talking to other behavioral binge eating therapists, and they thought studying the Atkins diet or a very high fat diet that didn't let carbs, was the worst thing to do for binge eating disorder. And of course, 25 years ago, they also thought that high fat diets were the worst thing you could do for heart disease, and so that paradigm shift, or flipping it upside down for cardiovascular disease, and here for binge eating disorders, takes actually it starts from that addiction model of, if you can't moderate, you have to stay away. The 12-step program for alcohol being applied to other areas, including food. And it makes sense, but you have to change. It's like you have to change your viewpoint. It doesn't make sense from the old way, but it does. And then the proof is in the studies being positive. So having Lonnie Seffi at Stanford published papers looking at food, looking at binge eating more as an addictive kind of thing, so that's just great. I credit your group and Jen Unwin and David Unwin for pushing this theme, even trying to get it into the medical world. It's a decade-long process.
Oh, it really is. And the change will come over the coming decades, and as I said,
Need it faster.
No, we do need it faster. We absolutely do need it faster, and I wish it was. But these things take decades to change. But I do honestly feel like we're starting to get to the early majority with all of this. So as I said at our conference this year, Eric, and shout out to you, because you were awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award this year.
Thank you.
Because, you know, in my eyes, you absolutely are a legend and pioneer in the field. Yeah, a lot of this wouldn't have come about without your work, you know, because you really stepped out from, you know, the mass of scientists that were out there, and you were genuinely curious, and you started a pilot study, and then that turned into quite a few randomized controlled trials. And without that basis, you know, none of this probably would have come about. So, you know, it's all credit to you.
Well, and to be fair, I just studied it, and Dr. Yancey and I had studied it and put it in the literature.
Yeah.
Dr. Atkins and Dr. Eads, Dr. Rosedale, it goes back to Banting, back to London, right? Were the real pioneers. But a recurring theme here with your N-of-1 trial being on the internet, nobody in the medical world will take notice. You get it into the PubMed, you formalize it through the due diligence of the paper, and that's what we did is got this information into a format that is more credible. And I had no idea the paradigm view against this would be so strong. You know, seeing the results in people day to day, you know, someone quoted me 10 years ago saying, why don't other doctors do this? It's so clear, it's so obvious. Well, that's a topic for another discussion of why the rest of the world hasn't caught on. But
yeah, well, that's the Semmelweis effect. That is. You know, for those that don't know, I forget his first name. It's like Ignaz Semmelweis. Yeah. Who was a Hungarian obstetrician based in Austria. And he was in charge of a hospital, maternity hospital, obviously, that had medical students attached to it. And this is like, I think in like the mid or late 1800s. And he came up essentially with the germ theory. So he did a test where, you know, he tracked the fertility rate from the medical students who were often coming from a theatre where they were dealing with cadavers.
the morgue,
The morgue, yeah, exactly. So obviously they were not experimenting, or, you know, trying their surgical skills on cadavers and things as they would have done back then. But obviously dealing with dead people and then going straight to deliver a baby. And then you had midwives that were, you know, just on the ward and just delivering babies and things. And there was a discrepancy in that. The fertility rate was lower.
Yeah.
The mortality rate was lower
for the midwives.
For the midwives compared to the medical students. And so he instituted a policy of washing hands for the midwives, and then it increased even more. And then it was like so obvious. It's like, right, the blanket policy is everybody wash their hands in between every single patient. But, you know, he presented this to the medical community and they thought it was absolute rubbish. You know, how dare you say that me, a gentleman doctor, has dirty hands? Like, that was the attitude. And
even if you had cadaver blood on it.
Yeah, exactly. That it doesn't mean my hands are dirty.
Right. So it's so important in many ways. Not only that no one believed him, but he didn't. Semmelweis didn't have to know why. He didn't have to know that there was a germ.
Exactly.
It was just the mere fact that
it was the effect.
Taking all this stuff off the hands. It's so obvious in retrospect. And then, of course, the tragedy with Semmelweis is he dies in an insane asylum.
Exactly.
Of an infection.
Yeah. Because he got beaten, right, as well, at the hospital. And obviously, like, his mental health must have been terrible because of the frustration of, like, not the medical community just not listening to him. And then, you know, I think it's 10 years later that some other stuff comes about and everybody goes, oh yeah, no, probably Semmelweis was right.
Well, the lesson here is don't go crazy on the fans.
Yes. Don't take it personally. Don't take it personally. Definitely not.
Right. So the world may not be ready for that in various different ways. And looping back to today, the having sugar around is just so common. I wonder if 10, 15 years from now, people will look back and say, oh my God, you had candy on a plane? You know, kind of like the smoke on the plane. Finally, you can't smoke on a plane. Or oh my God, there's candy at the checkout at the grocery store. This is just lunacy.
Yeah.
But well, again, it's so great to see you in person in London, and yes, thank you, and to the Public Health Collaboration for all the work that you do. I do think there is change happening for the good or for the health of people, but we fight so many different things, and yet the fights seem very similar in the UK and here in the US. There are many similarities.
Oh, very much so. And there are multiple forces at work, that are, stopping or preventing this from getting better. I think, as you say, though, there's absolutely improvement, and change is coming slowly but surely, and we just have to stay the course.
So
in time.
I didn't have a chance to check. I didn't have a chance to check the grocery store as much. Do you have keto bread and keto ice cream? No. So now I tell people to avoid. Don't have those things, but it's hit the shelves here.
Really, yeah. Not in a main supermarket. There are low calorie. There are certainly low calorie ice creams, and there are protein bars and things, but not really kind of keto snacks or keto bread that you can see in a main supermarket. You might be able to get it in health shops, but yeah, not kind of like a mainstream supermarket.
So here the food, big food has changed to include keto things, but they're not keto enough. They're not low enough in carbs for a true keto diet. But then, of course, my typical straw poll survey of cab drivers in London, 2 of the 3 had done Banting low carb keto at some point. But that means we have one more cabbie to convince.
Exactly, to give it a go.
Well, again, thank you for having me over to the meeting in London. Can people watch those videos after the fact?
Yeah, definitely. We're actually going to be publishing them this week, starting off with your presentation, Eric. So that's going to be available on our YouTube channel. So if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/PHC UK ORG, and yeah, subscribe to that, and you'll be getting 2 of this year's conference videos a week for the next couple of months. Just make sure you help spread the word. And yeah, if you want to come to next year's conference, please check out the conference website, which will be on the YouTube videos and things like that. But if you want to go check it out now, it's phcukconference.org.
And so many videos to watch from this meeting. I didn't even get to talk about the Tom Seyfried, Dr. Phillips combination, one after another. It was just kind of awe-inspiring, changing the cancer treatments, now getting tested in humans. And then having Andrew up in Andrew Scarborough, who had a brain tumor ages ago, him being there is what a great meeting, great group, and
thank you.
Keep it up, Sam.
Thanks, Eric. Really appreciate that, and thank you again for all that you've done for the movement at large and the betterment of people's health. You're just an absolute legend.
Well, and you are too. So we're in it for the right reason, I believe. So take care now. And see you soon.
Thanks, Eric. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
If you enjoyed this video, consider joining our YouTube membership for early access and exclusive live Q&As with me. Just click the join button below or support us with a PayPal in the description.